Hello and welcome to People Not Politics. My name is Rusty Pierce, I'm your host, and I'm here with Gina Montoya Ortega, a candidate for Las Cruces Mayor. Today we're going to talk about how to make Las Cruces a business-friendly city. How are you this morning, Gina?
Good, Rusty, thanks. How are you?
Good. So as I said, we're going to talk today about how to make Las Cruces a business-friendly city. You talk a lot about that, so I think it deserves a little bit more. But first, I noticed that a couple of signs have gone missing with your campaign. So I want to talk a little bit about vandalism and those signs. It is a felony to remove those, so talk a little bit about that if you can.
Okay, so once again, like as Rusty said, my name is Gina Montoya Ortega, and I'm a candidate for mayor of Las Cruces. Mi nombre es Eugenia Montoya Ortega y estoy corriendo por alcaldesa de la ciudad de Las Cruces. I have been married to my husband Ray Ortega for 33 and a half years. We have 3 adult children. We have a wonderful son-in-law, a wonderful daughter-in-law, and 2 beautiful grandchildren. We are also the co-owners of La Fiesta Bakery, who's temporarily closed, but with God willing, we will be open in November after the election. So like you wanted to talk about vandalism of signs. So yes, I have had several signs that have been cut, pushed over. I even had a sign that was taken, completely taken. To me, this is very childish. To say who's doing it, I couldn't honestly tell you. But you know, that is a form of vandalism, and it is a crime. And so I'm asking anybody, if you know of somebody that is taking down my sign or another candidate's sign or vandalizing them, please don't do that. These are signs that, for me, it's hard-earned money. It's our money that we have invested in the campaign. And I think it's very sad. If you just feel like, you know, you don't like me, don't take it out on my sign. You know what? Get out there and use your voice, use your vote. Vote for the candidate that you believe is a candidate that is going to continue to do what you believe your city needs or wants, or our city. So once again, please do not vandalize my signs and or other candidates' sign. To me, that is very childish. Whether it's a prank, please don't do that.
All right. So making this city business friendly. We've talked a lot in the past about how we think it's not. So what are some of the difficulties that make this not a business friendly city? And then once we talk about those difficulties, we'll discuss how each one can be addressed.
So I think the main thing that people are seeing is unnecessary regulations. We know that you're having to landscape your new build as part of the construction, part of the regulations. Inspector issues still, you know, we're having to have inspectors come out more than once. So yeah, those are many of the little things that we have.
Okay, so we'll talk about a lot of the unnecessary regulations, but a couple of them that you mentioned specifically there were inspectors. So what are the issues that we have with our inspectors so far, right now? So
the problem that we actually encountered when we opened our bakery, it would have been 15 years ago this year, it ended up being just 13 years that we were actually open, is the inspector, you would call for an inspection, and your inspector would come out and find issues. You would call out your contractors, whether it's your electrician, your plumbers. They would come in and fix these issues. You would call for re-inspection. Unfortunately, you didn't get more than likely the same inspector, and now this new inspector would find new problems. So to me, these are just little things that I would think as a business owner, what we thought was happening is just little ways of actually deterring us from actually getting our doors open. When you're a small business owner, you don't have time to be wasting. Your goal is to get in there, get open, serve the public that you are hoping to serve by being the small business owner and taking the risk of opening a business in Las Cruces. So you don't have time for all these unnecessary stipulations or regulations that are really unnecessary. I could understand, I mean, if it is something that is dangerous or not safe, well, yes, by all means, we need to make sure that we're fixing those, because I would not want to go as a person into a business and find this unsafe business. I wouldn't want not my family or friends to go into these unsafe businesses. So I'm not asking that we cut out the regulations of making a business safe, but little things like, for example, the landscaping. You know, if you're building and you're opening in November, December, and you have to now plant vegetation, 40% of a new build, your plants aren't going to survive. They're not going to survive that little bit of the cold that we're probably going to get. So these are regulations that I think need to be looked at, and if we can actually delay the planting, let's work with these businesses. Let's see what it is that's delaying them in opening up. And if it's something that we as a city or the ordinances that can be looked at, the regulations, let's look at those. Let's adjust those. Let's make it easier for them to come in. Are we saying, okay, well, we're just going to throw them out the window? No, we're saying that, you know what, okay, planting vegetation, we can wait until the spring or early summer, just in order to get that business open so that they can start making money. And, maybe a small business, that's another expense that they didn't realize that they were going to have to do. And plants are expensive. And why would you want to plant something and for it just to die? I mean, if I'm going to plant something, I hope that it's going to survive and it's going to be beautiful.
So when you call out for inspectors, do they come right away? Do we have a shortage? Do we have more than we need? What is it there?
No, the understanding that we have is there is a shortage of inspectors. So naturally, when you call for an inspection, it takes a couple of weeks, even a little bit longer. So there's obviously a shortage of inspectors.
Okay, so what do we do to fix that shortage?
Well, so we're having a shortage of inspectors. Why aren't we hiring more people? People in Las Cruces need jobs. There's a lot of qualified people. People who would love to go work for the city and be able to retire after their 20, 25 years, or even serve longer to actually do the best interest for the city. So we need to hire. If we need to hire people, let's hire inspectors. Let's get more people in there to get these businesses open. Because businesses open is going to be more jobs for people in Las Cruces.
You also talked about having inspectors come out, re-inspecting, then a different inspector come out. How do we fix that issue? How do we fix one inspector coming out, identifying all the issues on the first time, and the second inspector coming out to correct or to verify that they've all been corrected? What do we do there?
So I would assume that this has to do with training. Obviously, we're not all getting the same training, so we need to make sure that these inspectors are all trained in the same fashion. They need to have maybe a checklist that says, this is what we all follow, just like anything else in life and in school. If we're all following the same page, we're all going to be on the same sheet of music. We're going to all be singing the same song. But if we're not trained properly, then we're going to be doing things not in an orderly fashion. So I would assume that it's probably lack of training, or maybe lack of supervisors that are making sure that these inspectors are known what's required of them.
So providing training to the inspectors would be a way to
Yes.
stop the reoccurring visits. All right, so landscaping is another one that you mentioned. So how do we get rid of that regulation altogether? You said maybe allow it to the spring. Talk a little bit more about that.
No, so definitely not get rid of it. Landscaping is beautiful. Whether you choose a xeriscape, which is a way to actually go, because especially knowing in Las Cruces that we have the shortage of water. So we need to actually, if these businesses want to landscape, let's work with them. Let's work and say, okay, you have 3 months, or you know what, okay, fine, I need you to plant new vegetation, or even if it's somebody that's actually xeriscaping, so they're in the winter, that's not going to affect their business. But you know what, xeriscaping rocks are expensive. That stuff is still expensive, so let's give these small businesses or these businesses an opportunity to come in, make a little bit of money, and be able to put that landscaping in.
Okay, and I've heard you talk about paving parking lots and stuff as well. Would you have anything to say on that?
Well, I know now that the ordinance does show that you have to have your parking lot paved for health reasons. But yet I just met a gentleman the other day that, him and his family has had a business here in Las Cruces for many, many years. And back in the day, well, his business was fine. It was grandfathered in. Pavement was not required. Then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, the regulations changed and they had to pave their parking lot. Well, to pave a parking lot, it's expensive, and especially for a small business. A small business, people think, oh, you're rich, you have a lot of money. Let's tell you to pave your parking lot, and you're going to go do it tomorrow. No, a small business has a small budget, and we have to do things. We have to plan them out. So at that time, the city government that was there, will actually talk to this business owner. What is it going to take? We need you to pave this parking lot, and he said, I need time. I can't do it tomorrow. I can't do it next week. I can't do it next month. For whatever reason, he needed more time. So the city at that time, the city government, and it's been a few years back, many years back, they actually agreed. They talked and said, okay, fine, you need another year. We'll work with you. And he did. They continued. He knew that he had to get that parking lot paved. And in time, they worked it out, and he was able to get his parking lot paved, and he was able to meet the expectation that was required of him.
So there was leniency involved,
yes.
basically.
Yeah, so that's basically like what we're asking is, when people come and if your landscape is one of the things, why aren't we working with these people? Like I said, a landscaping, is that actually a safety issue? I don't believe that it is.
So do you think that there's some sort of process that these people need to go through when they're requesting leniency? Is there a process in place now? How would we accept those applications, or would we have an application?
Well, so growing up, my mom used to always have this, Spanish saying, "Hablando se entienden las cosas." Talking, you understand. So, I mean, in talking to the business owners, but business owners are, when you're first opening, you're kind of freaked out. You're a new business owner, you're not sure what to do, you're all these regulations and all these extra expenses that are now in your lap. So we need to just hear what people have to say. I mean, we need to come into a department that says, okay, we have this new business that's coming in and has this little issue. What can we do? And talking to the business owner, talking to the companies that are coming in, what can we do to help this? Now, of course, we're going to have those people that just want, oh, well, I need this and I need that, and they're unreasonable. But I mean, when you have somebody that's actually speaking with reason and asking for something that we can do to help, why aren't we helping these businesses? I mean, when these businesses come in, they are employing our people here in Las Cruces.
So would that be a good job for, say, a business liaison or something like that?
Yes, yes, definitely. So I ran 4 years ago, and when I ran 4 years ago, I was running still on the same thing, that we're not a business-friendly city. What was really a strange coincidence that like maybe 2 months into the race, all of a sudden we had a business liaison. So this is something the business liaison should do. This business liaison should be working with the city, working with the business owners, and seeing what we need to do to help them. I'm sure that one problem that a business owner that has opened, it's not the first rodeo. It's not the first problem that somebody that has tried to open a business in Las Cruces has experienced. I'm sure there's other businesses that have experienced this. So these are things that we need to come and say, okay, look, we had this business that came and had this issue, and we're able to resolve it. So that way when the next person comes in, it's not like it's your first rodeo. You know that people have had this problem. Let's do what we can to help them get in there.
So what are some other regulations that we might take a look at? I know there are banners and flags that get flown around town quite a bit.
Yeah, so when we opened our bakery, we didn't have the banners. You see those like 10-foot banners that people put at their entryway, usually on their businesses. We probably didn't get ours till about 8 years after we had opened. There was a gentleman that came in from California, and he was selling these banners. And one of them said bakery and the other one said donuts. And we're like, wow, cool, especially because where La Fiesta Bakery is, we're off of the road. We're not up against the road, where if you're up against the road, you're going to get more visibility. There is a sign, and the ordinance does require that those signs for businesses or shopping centers can only go so high. Well, the sign that's actually there is for our neighbor, Advance Auto, and they're on the top. So no other sign could go above them. So if I wanted to say, hey, La Fiesta Bakery is here on Valley Drive, I could not go higher than his sign. Yet our property owner, our landlord, had to have that landscaped. So he has these shrubs. Well, the shrubs pretty much went as high as a sign. So I wasn't able to put a sign up against the road because I'd be basically putting a sign into the trees. I mean, how is that going to get visibility? So I thought, oh, that's great. When this man came by, I said, we could put these banners, up against the road, let people know, hey, La Fiesta Bakery, we're back here. And it was amazing when we put those banners out, how many people said, oh my gosh, I just noticed your bakery. And we'd already been there 7 years. So this is a way to call new attention to our business. So then we actually had a code officer that came in and said, you can't have those. We're like, what? You cannot have those banners. Once again, it's an ordinance. You need to have those banners for only 40 days. So we went down to City Hall to find out what are the regulations on having these banners. Well, you have to apply for a permit. The city allows you to fly those banners only 40 days out of the year. And they ask that you run them or you use them consecutively 40 days, which will help them keep track of how many days you use it. Well, I mean, if I'm a business owner, I want to fly my banner, I'm more than likely going to fly it probably on the week that I've been a little bit slower. I mean, it would be nice to have these banners there all the time so you can call attention to your business. But the city's like, no, it's an eyesore. You can't have those all the time. But yet, okay, so where we were on Valley Drive, there was another business a little further down the road, and they had their banner up every day, all day long, for I would say at least 6 years. And it was a self-service type business. So when the code officer came and told me that, and then he told me that we had the 40 days, I said, what about that business right there on the corner? I said, I know they have their banner out. I mean, the banners are even worn out. They would wear out and they would go get new banners. I said, how come they're allowed to have their banners obviously more than the 40 days? And his comment was,
we're going to take a quick break here in just a minute, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about politics. and banner discussion quickly, but do you have any idea where they got that 40-day number? Did they pick that out of a hat? How did they decide on that 40-day number? Any idea?
No, I sure don't. I believe that, to me, it sounds like it's just something that you pick out of the hat. It doesn't even make sense. I mean, when you have 12 months out of the year, how do you determine the 40 days? So no, I have no idea where that came from, so.
All right, stick around. You're watching People Not Politics with Gina Montoya Ortega, a candidate for Las Cruces Mayor. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
There you go.
So great, you do all these different gears in the clan.
Okay.
Nice.
Other guys, not all. But
Horizon Granite is here. We'll come to you to customize your kitchen and bathroom with beautiful countertops and cabinets. Find out more at horizongranite.com. Call us at 575-650-3180.
Horizon Granite is here.
It's here.
Make yourself a beautiful home.
Hi, I'm Ray Bamberg with Here on Earth. I would like to invite you for a free hearing evaluation to our office. We've been here in southern New Mexico for 34 years helping people hear better.
Hello and welcome back to People Not Politics with Gina Montoya Ortega, a candidate for Las Cruces Mayor. My name is Rusty Pierce and I'm hosting this episode of How to Make Las Cruces a Business-Friendly City. Gina, before we left the break, we were talking about banners and flags and equal treatment. So tell me a little bit more about that and not knowing who owned the business down the street, essentially.
Yeah, so I was kind of actually insulted because I know that I can go down to the county assessor's office. It's public record. I can actually ask, I can go by your house and not know your name and go, hey, who owns that house? And it's public record. So when the code officer told me that, I mean, maybe once again, maybe it was something that he actually didn't know. Maybe it was, beyond his knowledge to know. But he told me, well, I don't know. We don't know who owns that property, so I don't know who to contact. Well, being that it's self-service, of course, there's nobody there that he could actually go say, hey, take your banner down. But yet me, because serve the public and we're where you can come into our business, he knew to come tell us about our banners. So I told him, and I wasn't being disrespectful, I wasn't being tacky, I just assumed that, okay, he doesn't know who owns the property. So I told him, I said, well, if you want, I'd be more than happy. We could go in your car, we can go in my car, we can go separately. We can go down to the county assessor's office. I can find out who owns that property so that you can notify them that they're obviously in violation. So I was kind of just insulted, but like I said, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. He obviously maybe didn't know, so.
Okay, so they don't treat everybody equally, essentially, is what you're saying. Why do you think that is?
Well, again, it's probably back to politics. People are not treated fairly. The banners, they said if you have the banners, it's an eyesore, but yet we can have these eyesores at other businesses. So it's obviously politics. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And so a lot of people that obviously know people, they get special preference over the rest of us. I mean, we have ordinances, we have regulations. I feel like, you know what, either we all follow them or let's get rid of them. But I don't think we should give favoritism to one business or one person over another.
Okay, one of the ordinances that I oftentimes have a question about, if the weeds get too high, you oftentimes get a code officer to come by, and those code officers will tell you that you have a certain amount of days to pull those weeds. So I drive around and I see on city property that the weeds are sometimes 3 feet tall, 2.5 feet tall at least. In some cases, when we canvass the neighborhoods, it's taller than I am. what's going on with that?
So once again, I don't know if this is lack of training or lack of supervision to actually get to these code officers and tell them, because you're right, you can go to a certain area and we're picking on somebody for their weeds. My dad passed away last year in August, and on his property, normally after the first rain that we got or the first couple little rains, his weeds were up, a foot almost, in a few days. And so he had the code officer that would come knock on the door and tell him, you need to clean up those weeds. You have 3 days. Well, by the last part of his life, he wasn't able to go cut those weeds himself. Probably up to 4 years before that, he would actually go out there with a weed eater, an 84-year-old man out there with a weed eater for 2 hours and take out all his weeds. Well, now this required, I'm his only child, so it required us to do it. Well, we have the bakery, and once again, you're going to enforce or come after me and say, hey, you need to cut those weeds down. You have 3 days. Well, if I'm busy at my job, I can't do it in 3 days. But yet, like you said, so outside my dad's yard, he didn't even understand. He's like, okay, well, why are they telling me about my weeds that are a foot high, but right outside his fence, it's their property, and the weeds were taller than I was. And so I brought that to the attention of the code officer, and I said, you're giving me 3 days. I said, and look at those weeds. I said, look at yours. I mean, not his particularly, but the city government. And he goes, oh, well, we're short-handed. Well, you know what? I'm busy too. Once again, I wasn't trying to be rude, but I just said, well, that's your problem. Not his in general problem, but that's the city's problem. Once again, if we have these ordinances and these regulations that you expect me to follow, why expect you to do the same thing? I would never expect something to do something I wouldn't do first. So if you're going to tell me about my weeds, well, then let's look at the weeds all over the different parts of the city. There are some code officers that are more lenient, or for whatever reason, I don't know. You can actually go to different parts of town and the weeds are allowed to grow higher or taller, but yet you go to other parts of town and the weeds are, need to be a certain point. I know that we're having a lot of weed problems, but, once again, if these are ordinances that we have, we need to expect everybody to follow them all the same. When I was talking to even with our bakery, there was a gentleman that came in and he had said, now that our bakery was having problems, he's like, hey, I have a building over here that you can come rent from me. And I said, we have a wonderful landlord. Our building is not the problem. I said, the problem is how do I know this isn't going to happen somewhere else? And then I said, and it took us almost 2 years to open, back to the ordinances, to open our bakery, almost 2 years. And I said, what's the guarantee that I move now to your building and it's going to take me another 2 years? And he said, oh, don't worry about it. He goes, I have the back door. I know the people. So once again, people are even talking. They're honest. They're not trying to be boastful. They're just saying, oh, I know people that'll, help me get you taken care of a little bit quicker. So once again, we need all this favoritism to stop. We need to look at, what, we're all the same. We all pay taxes. We're entitled to the same thing, whether you pay penny taxes or $1 million taxes, whether your business or a home, whether your house is a $50,000 home on the west side, which is my dad's home, or you have a $350,000, $400,000 home on another part of town. You're obviously blessed, but yet you should be entitled, or you should have to follow the same ordinances or regulations that the person on the $30,000. And I did talk to a code officer recently, and he told me, he said, they have a program now. It's actually called the Golden or the Senior or something. And what it is that if there's a senior citizen that does need more time or help, they actually have a group of volunteers that do actually go help the seniors cut their weeds. Like I told them, I said, what, I'm not asking for somebody to come help, because obviously that help could be for somebody else that really needs the help. All I need is I need a little bit more time. And so this last year or so that we actually had to deal with a code officer, he was very nice. He told me, ma'am, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to do my job. I'm willing to work with you. So once again, this code officer was willing to talk and say, tell me what you need. If you tell me you need another week, that's fine. Just talk to us. So the city is somewhat, making this adjustment versus to the code officer that we had that was, just at the bakery was just giving us a really hard time.
So it sounds like what you're saying is whether you're in City Council District 6 or in District 1, you should be treated the same way.
Yes.
Regardless of whether your tax base is, a $400,000 home versus a $80,000 home, $50,000 home, something like that.
Yes.
Everybody should be treated equally.
Yes, and one of the problems that we encountered even with that, now with the Valley Drive project, we would go to the meetings once a month. And there was a business owner on Valley Drive, and he got up and he says, I have a multi-million-dollar business, and you're affecting my business. And at that time, I called him out and I said, you know what? I said, I have a multi-penny business, but I pay my taxes just like you do. And he put his hands up and he didn't want to go there anymore. Because once again, like you said, and we've been saying is, you know what? We should all be treated the same, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're blessed, whether you're not, whatever it may be. We all are citizens in Las Cruces. We all love Las Cruces. We need to all be treated the same.
So there are some more questions that's similar to the weeds. When we canvass, I oftentimes see weeds that are growing into the sidewalk. I have to walk into the road because they're all the way in the sidewalk. One of the other things that I notice is watering. Walk by Apodaca Park, and there's a stream of water running down the road. We essentially water the road. Why do we water the roads? I don't get it.
Yeah, so there is the ordinance too that you're only allowed to water on certain days. But in talking to people and talking to code officers and even driving by or just, talking to just people in general, I mean, if you actually stop to look, I mean, the city, we're the worst offender of all the same regulations that we expect the public to follow. Apodaca Park, I live in the general vicinity. I live close to the Brannigan Library, and a lot of times too with that grass there that they have is very beautiful, but yet a lot of the water is going into the road. We have a shortage of water in Las Cruces, so the water is very precious. We can't just invent water. We just can't, go build water. Water is a natural, precious resource that we need to take care of.
And are code officers treating districts differently based on watering restrictions as well, for example?
I'm sure, just like all the other things, we do have, certain areas that do get special preference and not special preference. At a recent city council meeting, one of the city councilmen made a comment, now in this city we can actually see the haves and the have-nots. So basically, in other words, that's saying, you have not, you don't have to follow, or you have to follow the regulations. We have the haves, and they don't have to follow those same regulations. Like I said, I'm not trying to pick on one or the other. I just feel like, this is all our city. If you look at the organizational chart, on the top of that organizational chart is the people. It's the people's city. It's not the mayor's city. It's not the city councilman's city. It's all our city. It's the people before city government.
Thank you, Gina. Today we talked about how to make Las Cruces a business-friendly city. We talked about various regulations that we could offer leniency on and some that we could correct. So thank you for joining us today, and stay tuned for our next episode.
I'm Gina Ortega, and I approve this message. Vivian Fritz, Treasurer.